Beneath the shadow of the cathedral's spire, the market square stirs, as if waking from a long-held breath. O dawn. Light spills across the cobblestones, catching on wet stones still slick from the night's mist. Merchants raise their stalls one by one, cloth canopies unfurling like sails, catching the wind in slow swelling sighs. Baskets are tipped and sorted. Figs, pears, and small green apples tumble into neat pyramids. Spices are unwrapped from waxed cloth, their scents rising, cinnamon sharp as memory, saffron warm as summer fields. And at the square's center, women begin to gather, their skirts brushing against one another in soft murmurs of linen and wool. The first sound is a drum, low, patient, calling as a heartbeat calls blood through the body. Then another, quicker like footsteps hurrying to keep pace. Fingers darkened by sun and work tap the stretched hide with a certainty learned long before these women had children or husbands. A lute joins, notes spilling like water from a tilted jar, and voices rise. Not all at once, but one after another, a weaving. Each melody carries something more than song. The echo of a mother bending over a cradle, the rhythm of pounding dough in a warm kitchen. The prayer whispered before a child's fever breaks. Children dart between the dancers' skirts, laughter high and bright. The smell of fresh bread from a nearby oven drifts into the music, as if the two are made of the same air. Old women, their veils pinned carefully, sway where they stand, mouthing words they have known since girlhood. Some of the men stand at the edges, pretending to talk trade, yet their eyes are drawn to the square's heart, to the women who do not dance for them, but for one another and for themselves. Above the spire's bells, mark the hour. Their solemn bronze voices fall into the rhythm, without disturbing it, like another instrument joining the whole. A young woman with hair the color of wheat steps forward, her tambour small and worn smooth by years of use. She turns her face toward the sunlight as she plays, the thin gold chain at her neck glinting with each movement. There is no crown upon her head, yet here she rules, not through decree or bloodline, but through the invisible threads that bind every listener to her beat. The city listens, though it may not know it. For in the music lies something older than law, older than the cathedral itself. The right to gather, to sing, to mark the passing of a season not with quiet obedience, but with sound. Even the merchant's calls soften, shaped by the rhythm. For a few breaths, the marketplace is not a place of bargaining, but a place of belonging. As the sun climbs, shadows shorten, and the colors of silk grow fierce under its gaze. The music swells, then falls to a hum, as if it might slip into memory before the day is done. Yet somewhere in the crowd, a young girl clutches a garland of wildflowers, watching, listening. Tomorrow she will hum this tune as she tends the goats, as she fetches water, as she sits by the fire combing her hair. The song will outlast the festival, carried on in her breath, and so the rhythm will endure, waiting for the next gathering, the next season, the next moment, when the city's pulse beats once more in their keeping. Would you like me to also write the previous chapter hook, so this flows even more naturally as part of the larger documentary? It would make it feel truly like one continuous cinematic journey. The frost still holds to the cobblestones, a thin white skin that crunches softly beneath hurried feet. In the pale half-light, the world is hushed, but for the faint rustle of skirts and the clatter of wooden shoes on stone, from narrow lanes they emerge, shawls drawn close against the cold. Faces half hidden, but eyes bright with something that stirs beneath the season's chill. Their breath unfurls in silver ribbons, rising to meet the faint smoke drifting from hearths not yet stoked for the day's labors. One carries a rebec, its neck worn smooth, where her fingers have pressed it over years. Another holds a small vial, its strings newly tightened against the cold. Bells sewn into hymns chime gently with each step, not loud enough to summon the city, but enough to mark their arrival to one another. They walk not with the timid pace of errands, but with the quiet purpose of those who know the day will belong to them, if only for a few precious hours. The square waits as a blank canvas, its market stalls still bare, the air unbroken by the usual bargaining cries. Frost glitters in the hollows of stone carvings, in the grooves between cobbles, in the darkened mouths of doorways. A small boy darts across with a bundle of kindling, and a woman calls after him, her voice lilting in the local tongue, half a scold, half a song. Slowly, the women begin to set their places. By mid-morning, the air shifts. Stalls bloom with bolts of dyed linen and baskets of chestnuts. The scent of baking bread begins to mingle with the sharp bite of winter air. The first bow is drawn across strings, a single note quivering before it falls into the waiting space. Another follows, and then another, until the music builds like sunlight breaking through a shutter. Fingers move swiftly, shaping melodies learned in quiet kitchens. Between the cries of children, after the evening prayers, when the day's labor was finally done, these are not courtly compositions from gilded halls, but the music of lived breath, born in fields, hearths, and hidden corners. The men gather in small knots at the tavern's edge, mugs lifted, words drowned beneath the swelling sound. Merchants shout their wares, but even their calls begin to sway with the rhythm, their syllables bending to the women's pace. Children skip in time, their cheeks flushed, their laughter chasing the cold from the air. Here, in the square's beating heart, it is not gold, not rank, not decree that shapes the day, but the steady, unyielding pull of music in women's hands. A young girl, no more than 12, stands at the fringe, clutching a borrowed tambour. She hesitates, then steps forward, eyes darting toward an older woman whose smile is answer enough. The girl strikes the skin, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. Around her, the women's music folds her in, making space without pause, as if she had always been meant to stand there. By noon, the square is a blaze of sound and color, the frost long vanished. Skirts flare in motion, braids swing, and the bell in the cathedral tower tolls as though in time. For these hours, the world narrows to the pulse of the drum, the hum of strings, the rise of voices. The festival belongs to them, though no charter grants it so. And when the sun dips, and the first shadows stretch long across the stones, the music will not end, it will only move. Carried in their steps, their hums, their breath into kitchens and fields into the next dawn and the next. Would you like me to also write the next chapter transition? So this blends seamlessly into the following section of the documentary? That way the emotional thread stays unbroken? The Great Hall breathes with a life of its own, though the night outside lies locked in the cold stillness of deep winter. Drafts snake along the floor, setting the edges of the great woven tapestries trembling. Hunting scenes, saints and mythic beasts shifting in the firelight as though waking. Reed matting muffles the step, but not the rhythm. It is the music that holds the air here that warms the stones more surely than the roaring hearths. Women cross and circle, their skirts brushing the mats. Hymns darkened, where melted snow has crept up from the entryway. The lutes speak first, their strings plucked into bright, sharp notes, and the flutes answer, their breath weaving soft silver through the air. The tabor's beat follows, unyielding and low, like a heart too full to be stilled. In its pulse the dancers find their footing, steps turning quick. And sure, each movement echoing patterns learned in kitchens, gardens, and market squares, long before they stepped into this hall. Beyond the wash of torchlight, nobles lean in shadow, jeweled fingers resting on goblets, eyes half hidden beneath the tilt of fur-lined hoods. They watch, but the women do not dance for their gaze. Their glances meet each other instead, brief, conspiratorial sparks, the corners of mouths curving in shared amusement at some remembered jest. It is a language spoken without words, as old as the lullabies and work songs that have passed through their hands for generations. The air is thick with more than music. It holds the scent of roasted venison, of beeswax candles softening into rivulets, of wool and dyed silks warmed by fire. Shadows of the dancers sway across the stone walls, their shapes breaking and reforming with each turn. A young woman with a crown of winter berries in her hair spins, her sleeves trailing like streams of light in the torch glow. For a heartbeat, her face is lifted toward the high, dark rafters, as though she were calling to something above, some older presence listening in the beams. Outside, snow sifts down in silence, cloaking the roofs of the village until the world seems no larger than the lighted hall. The frost in the air beyond the doors bites sharp, but here the cold has no dominion. The music swells, drawing the gathered into its current, servants lingering with platters in hand. A boy too young to dance, tapping his foot behind a pillar, an elder seated near the fire mouthing each verse as though the words were prayer. Hours slip by unnoticed, marked only by the slow sinking of candle flames in their iron sconces. And still the music does not falter. Each beat of the drum, each turn of the dancer's steps, seems to push back the dark beyond the walls, as though the very act of playing and moving keeps the winter at bay. Here, within this moment, the lines between noble and servant, widow and bride, child and elder dissolve. There is only the rhythm, the breath, the joining. When at last the night thins toward its deepest hour, the candles gutter, their flames bowing low before they vanish into smoke. The hall exhales, but the silence that follows is not emptiness. It is the lingering echo of steps, of glances, of laughter without permission. Somewhere beyond these walls, the snow is still falling. But inside each heart, the beat continues, quiet yet certain, carrying the night forward into whatever waits beyond the doors. The river moves slowly under the weight of late spring, its surface broken only by the drifting of petals from the orchards upstream. Yet above the steady hush of water, another current carries. The thin, bright cry of flutes, rising and falling like the call of unseen birds, and beneath it the pulse of a single drum, deep as the earth. The sound draws the listener forward before the eye has caught a glimpse of its source. Over the bridge they come, women in gowns dyed with saffron, madder, and woad, their colors glowing in the softened light. The boards of the bridge creak beneath their steps, but they move without hesitation, each carrying a garland wound with rosemary, hawthorn, and the first roses of the season. The scent clings to them, mingling with the faint sweetness of river mist. Some pause to glance down at their own reflections in the water, as though checking that the faces looking back are still their own. It's not yet changed by the day that waits beyond. The meadow greets them in riotous bloom, not just with its wildflowers, but with the sudden burst of pavilions, their canvas dyed and painted, edges snapping gently in the breeze. Ribbons hang from poles, and the wind catches them, so they ripple like streams of color flowing upward. Between the tents, long tables are set with bread, fresh cheese, and pitchers of watered wine, ready for the first wave of celebration. They do not wait for music to begin. It is already there, waiting for them. Flutes sing in voices shaped by centuries, the notes winding through words in the old tongue, words no longer written, but carried forward in breath. The syllables roll softly, heavy with meaning for those who understand, and still beautiful to those who do not. A group of women step into the open space, hands linked, moving in widening spirals until their skirts swell like sails in a wind, the hems brushing the grass, stirring its seeds into the air. Children dart between them, scattering petals in their wake. An older woman leans on a carved stick, her lips curving into a smile that belongs to both memory and the present moment. Here, voices rise in laughter that carries no weight of deference, no shadow of caution. It's for these days only, these few days. The boundaries of rank and rule seem to blur like ink and water. The miller's daughter can jest with the reeve's wife. A widow can dance beside a maiden without whisper or judgment. It is a fleeting kingdom, but it belongs to them. As the sun leans westward, shadows begin to stretch, the colors of the gowns and tents deepening to something richer, more secret. Yet the music does not soften. It swells, as though each player and singer knows that the night will come too soon. Beyond the meadow, the river keeps moving, untroubled, carrying on its slow course, just as it will tomorrow. When the laughter has been folded away with the garlands, and the rules have quietly reclaimed their place, but tonight the water will bear with it the echoes of drum beats and the faintest trace of song, carrying them to places where no law can still them. And in the hearts of those who walked the bridge and crossed into this day, the sound will not vanish with the dawn. It will remain waiting like seeds beneath winter earth, for the next time the river calls them home. A single bell tolls from the abbey, its bronze voice cutting through the morning mist and brushing against the steep roofs of the town. Its tone is solemn, meant to summon all souls to prayer, yet the streets remain stubbornly alive with another rhythm. From kitchens where women scrubbed and kneaded, from workshops where flax was spun into thread, from hearthlit corners where bread still rises, they emerge. Cloaks drawn close, aprons dusted with flour or soot, they move toward the sound that calls, not from stone or decree, but from fire, from laughter, from something older than law itself. The festival reveals itself slowly, like a candle breaking through dusk. A circle of firelight blooms in the market square, flames licking the damp cobbles, throwing shadows that stretch and twist over walls worn smooth by time. Women take their place around it, some with pipes pressed to their lips, fingers trembling over reeds, others clapping in sync with a beat that has survived generations, hands scarred and calloused, yet quick with memory. Their steps echo against the walls, sometimes tentative, sometimes bold, but always purposeful. Here, for a few stolen hours, the weight of daily toil, the endless chores, the laboring kitchens, the hushed obedience demanded by men and masters, seems to lift, replaced by the pulse of shared joy. Children dart between skirts, cheeks flushed, hair catching sparks of light. The scent of burning wood mingles with the sweetness of freshly baked cakes and the tang of spiced wine. Old women veiled and bent hum along, voices carrying fragments of melodies learned before their daughters were born. Each note holds the residue of forgotten lives, the lullabies sung by candlelight, the songs murmured as hands kneaded dough, the quiet refrains whispered into the wind during walks to the fountain. This music does not simply entertain, it binds them, connecting the young to the old, the laborer to the widow, the quiet observer to the one bold enough to lead a dance. Even as nobles pass through the square, their jeweled hands brushing over silk sleeves, they are drawn, reluctantly, into the current. They watch the women's rhythms and find themselves swaying, their voices unconsciously echoing a refrain too ancient to resist. The market stalls, the bread ovens, the fountain where the town gathers, all become extensions of this circle of firelight. Parts of a living tapestry stitched together by song and laughter. A girl steps forward, no more than 10. Her pipe small and fragile in her hands. She lifts it to her lips, uncertain, and then the music claims her. Breath and melody intertwine, her notes joining those older, stronger, steadier. For a moment she forgets the chores waiting at home, the lessons she must obey, the rules that tell her voice should be quiet. Here, the circle holds her, teaches her, gives her claim to a freedom she cannot yet name. As the sun slides toward its zenith, the flames burn brighter, shadows flaring over walls and rooftops. The bell may toll again, the abbey may summon prayers, yet the firelight does not dim. Each song leaves a trace in bones, a memory that will survive the return to kitchens and workshops, the reappearance of authority and expectation. And though no scribe will mark these hours in any chronicle, though the festival will vanish as the evening draws near, the echo of hands, pipes, and laughter will carry forward, hidden but unbroken, ready to rise again when the next circle gathers and the next fire is lit.